Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I started playing the violin when I was just 3 years old. And even when I was younger, music was always something internal. It was always something personally driven for me. I remember when I was in middle school, the music teacher would have to leave an extra set of keys outside of his room every morning because I wanted to be the first one to open the practice room to play before school started. I loved it that much. And when I got to high school, the hours spent, they started to pay off. And I was selected to participate in what was called the All-State Orchestra in Maryland, where I grew up. And this was a weekend when the top music performers from around the state would gather together and learn music and put on a performance on that Sunday evening. And on that Friday, I remember driving up. It was in a convention center like this in Maryland, and I remember driving to the location, and I was filled with anxiety, but it wasn't a scared feeling. It was more like a Christmas Eve feeling, because the anticipation, the excitement was so high. I was just ready to meet people like me, fellow music nerds that I could relate to and connect with for a few days. When I got to the location, I checked in at registration and everything, and I found the chair with my name on it in the violin section. But I noticed that I had about 20 or 30 minutes before the first rehearsal was to begin, and so I just dropped my violin on the chair like that and tried to meet a few people before it all started. And I remember I saw this group of students. They were sitting in a circle on the ground, and they were playing cards. And so I went over and I introduced myself, and I asked if I could join. But as soon as I sat down, I could tell that two of the other students were laughing and whispering to each other. And it felt a little bit uncomfortable, and so I asked what was funny. And I'll never forget it. This kid, without hesitation, he just looked me dead in the eye and said, "I didn't know black people played the violin." And I didn't know what to say. I was silent. In hindsight, I would have had this beautifully composed and well-developed statement on race and stereotypes to give right back to him, but I didn't know that was going to be a requirement for the weekend. And so I was caught off guard. Right? I just awkwardly laughed it off like it was nothing. But internally, it was everything. And I remember when the first rehearsal began, I was sitting back in my chair, and I looked out into the entire group, and I realized that amongst the 150 students that were there, I was one of only 2 black students. And throughout the weekend, I realized that the student who had made that remark to me, that he wasn't alone in his sentiment about me being there and his surprise. Throughout those 3 days, I felt the stares. I felt the glances, and it didn't feel that good. It felt like I was an other. It felt like the activity that I loved so much wasn't meant for me. And even more in that weekend, I realized that for some reason, my race and the instrument I loved was a conversation starter for people. And whenever someone found out that I played the violin, there would be this whole onslaught of questions that would feel honestly patronizing to answer. Questions like, how did you even start? Or questions like, how did you even learn about the violin? Or how did you even begin how to play? And when I would have to respond to those questions, it would make me feel like I had to defend what was so normal to me, defend what was my everyday experience. And it would weigh on me heavily. And over time, when I was younger, I essentially developed this defense mechanism where I taught myself how to avoid the topic of the violin altogether. And when I would meet new people and they would ask me what I did or what I'd like to do, I would always say music or art or something generic like that so that we could just go on with the rest of the conversation. And I was trying to avoid the awkwardness of potentially making someone confront a stereotype. I was trying to keep the conversation smooth. I wanted to avoid the commotion. I just wanted to blend in. And I started doing this around the age when social acceptance was everything. Around the age when fitting in felt like a matter of life and death. Around the age when you'd rather starve and eat alone than to take that last seat alone at a lunch table. But sadly, this habit that I built, it stuck with me for years and years. And until recently, it felt like I was hiding, like I was covering up my passion, covering up what made me different and shying away from the contrast between what others thought and what was in my heart. But a few years ago, something special happened for me that changed this behavior of mine. I was near my hometown in Maryland, and I randomly ran into this younger student who went to the school that I'd gone to while growing up. And he was a younger black kid, and it was crazy because I felt as if his presence alone was just a mirror pointed right back at me. And what he told me was crazy because he started talking about how I had inspired him to play the violin. And he told me stories about how he was getting teased, how he was getting told that he wasn't black enough for the instrument he liked, and that he almost quit. But that he saw me perform years ago, and somehow that was that extra boost of confidence that he needed. It was that missing piece that propelled him to pursue his passion. And when he shared this with me, I was honestly shocked because, as I said, music has always been something that's been extremely internal, very personal. I was never trying to be someone's role model or even make a statement. I was just being true to me. And that was the day I learned that being true to me, regardless of what other people thought, was in fact a statement in itself. That was the day I saw the power of moving quietly upstream against the narratives, the perceptions that flow throughout our minds. And in talking to him, I felt inspired to no longer shy away from these conversations about race and music. And I even felt a sense of responsibility that I had to embrace the questions, that I had to embrace the awkwardness, embrace the confrontation, because I now saw the progress that could occur from just being authentic. As marketers here at Inbound, we're all people looking to spread ideas throughout the world. And it can be so easy sometimes to just go with the flow. Right? Just play it safe, just follow the current trend that's worked in the past or for others. But I invite you to embrace that what makes you different gives you power. That what makes you different gives you power. Be the voice that disrupts the norm. Be the individual whose presence alone sparks a dialogue. Be the organization. Be the organization that does not shy away from the important conversations, but leads by giving people something real and authentic. The most important thing I learned in talking to that kid that day is that perhaps leadership could simply be the act of being brutally honest about what you believe and trusting that it will attract and inspire those who are in need of that one missing piece that only you can provide. Thank you so much.